There is a man in your life who works less than you. He stresses less than you. He moves slower than you. And somehow he ends up with more than you. More respect. More power. More of everything you have been grinding for. You told yourself he got lucky. Or that the system is broken. But what if the problem is not the system? What if it is the way you were taught to compete in it? Research in behavioral psychology shows that the men who appear to strain the most are consistently rated as lower status by the people around them. Not weaker in talent, weaker in presence. In this video, I am going to show you the exact mechanism behind this. Why visible effort signals desperation. Why strategic restraint signals power. And how the Stoics and Machiavelli both knew this, centuries before modern psychology gave it a name. Most men never figure this out. You are about to. You were built to perform effort. That was useful once. Now it is costing you everything you want. Think about the first time someone praised you. You were probably a child. Maybe you finished your homework early. Maybe you cleaned your room without being asked. Maybe you stayed late to help with something nobody else wanted to do. And someone looked at you and said, "Good job. You worked hard. I am proud of you." That moment felt good. So you chased it again and again. And by the time you were an adult, you had built an entire identity around being the man who tries hard. The man who shows up early and leaves late. The man who never says no. The man who carries more than his share. You did not choose this. It was chosen for you. Your school gave gold stars to the student who worked the most hours, not the one who solved the problem fastest. Your parents measured your worth by how much you struggled. Your culture told you that a real man proves himself through visible sacrifice. Rest was weakness. Ease was laziness. If people could not see you working, you were not working hard enough. And so you learned to perform effort. Not just do the work, but be seen doing it. You learned to look busy, to talk about how tired you are, to wear your grind like a badge. Here is what nobody told you. That badge does not signal strength. To the people who actually hold power, it signals that you are still trying to prove something. And a man who is still trying to prove something has not arrived yet. The trap is this. The harder you work to be seen, the less powerful you appear. Not because effort is wrong, but because compulsive, visible, desperate effort tells the room that you need their approval to feel okay. And need of any kind lowers your value in the eyes of every person watching. Look at the men in your life who seem to have the most. Not the ones who post about their grind at midnight. The ones who move quietly. Who speak only when they have something worth saying. Who seem to decide slowly and deliberately where their time and energy go. Those men are not lucky. They are operating by a completely different set of rules. Rules that most men never discover. Because most men are too busy performing effort to stop and examine what effort is actually producing. You were conditioned to believe that more effort always leads to more reward. That is not always true. Sometimes more effort leads to more exploitation. More availability leads to less respect. More output leads to less perceived value. The man who is always there, always ready, always producing, always saying yes, eventually becomes invisible. Not because he is weak, but because he has made himself too easy to access. And things that are easy to access are never treated as rare. This is where the Stoics come in. And specifically, Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius was the most powerful man in the ancient world. He commanded the Roman Empire. He had access to every resource, every pleasure, every comfort a man could imagine. And yet, his private journals, the ones he never intended for anyone else to read, are filled with one repeated instruction to himself. Do only what is necessary. Nothing more. He did not write this as a productivity tip. He wrote it as a philosophical law. The Stoics believed that every action a man takes costs him something. Not just time, not just energy, but a piece of his inner world, his clarity, his focus, his sense of self. Every wasted move, every meeting that did not need to happen, every conversation that produced nothing, every task done for the sake of appearing busy was a leak. A slow drain on the man inside. Think about your own day. How many things did you do today because they actually needed to be done? And how many things did you do because you felt guilty not doing them? Because someone expected it? Because saying no felt dangerous? Every time you said yes when you should have said nothing, you spent from a reserve that does not refill easily. Every time you jumped to respond, to fix, to produce before it was necessary, you moved energy away from the things that actually deserve it. The Stoic practice is not about doing less because you are tired. It is about doing less because you have chosen, deliberately, what deserves the full weight of your presence. You do not water every plant in the field. You identify the ones worth growing, and you give those your complete attention. Everything else you let go without guilt. This is not laziness. This is precision. And precision, in a world full of men thrashing around trying to prove something, is one of the rarest things a man can demonstrate. When people see a man who moves with precision, who is not rushed, not reactive, not desperate to be involved in everything, they do not think he is lazy. They think he must have something more important to do. They assume his time is valuable. They begin to treat his presence as a privilege rather than a given. And that shift changes everything. If you have ever been the hardest working man in the room and still ended up with less than you deserved, you already know exactly what I am talking about. Keep watching. Now let us talk about Machiavelli. Because what the Stoics understood about inner discipline, Machiavelli understood about outer power. And the two ideas, when placed together, form something most men in self-improvement have never been taught. Most people hear the name Machiavelli and think manipulation, deception, cold, ruthless strategy. But the deepest insight in everything Machiavelli wrote is not about tricks. It is about perception. Specifically, power is not what you have. Power is what people believe you have. He studied the most powerful leaders of his time, and one pattern appeared in nearly all of them. The ones who held lasting power were not the ones who worked the hardest or appeared most often. They were the ones who were hardest to reach, who moved rarely, who, when they did appear, made the room feel the weight of it. Think about that for a moment. When someone is constantly available, always texting back immediately, always willing to meet, always easy to access, what do you feel about them? Maybe comfort, maybe convenience, but rarely deep respect. Not the kind of respect that makes a man think twice before crossing you. Now think about someone who is harder to reach, whose time you know is limited, whose attention you have to earn. When that person finally gives you their time, how does it feel? It feels like something that matters, because scarcity creates value, and value creates power. The man who is always there slowly becomes part of the furniture. The man who shows up selectively, deliberately, commands attention every single time he walks in. In The Prince, Machiavelli notes that a leader who seems rushed, reactive, or overwhelmed loses the confidence of the people around him. But a leader who appears calm, measured, and unhurried, even in chaos, commands trust. Not because he has done more, but because he projects the signal of a man who is in control. Here is the real-life application. In your next meeting, say less. Let others fill the silence. When someone sends you a message that does not require an immediate answer, do not immediately answer it. Not to play games, but to practice the discipline of deciding consciously where your response goes and when. The next time someone asks you for something that costs you more than it produces, say no, calmly, without a long explanation. And watch how the dynamic slowly shifts. The surgeon operates twice a week. His colleague operates every day. Who do you trust with the harder case? Most people choose the one who operates less. Why? Scarcity of access creates the assumption of quality. The man who rations his effort signals, I have standards. I do not give this to everyone. And that signal carries more weight than any amount of visible grinding ever could. Now let us talk about what behavioral psychology actually says. Because this is not just philosophy. There is real science underneath it. When a person is constantly available, always responding, always showing up without being asked, the people around them begin to take that availability for granted. The brain assigns worth based on scarcity and the effort required to obtain something. When something is always there, the brain stops registering it as special. It becomes expected, normal, invisible. We notice and value things by comparing them to what we normally experience. When a man who is usually quiet suddenly speaks, people listen. When a man who is usually unavailable suddenly gives you his time, you feel it. When a man who rarely reacts finally reacts, the room pays attention. But the man who is always speaking, always available, always reacting, creates no contrast. There is nothing for the people around him to measure against. He is simply a constant. And constants disappear from awareness. When a man compulsively produces, always working, always doing, always outputting, he signals something uncomfortable. He signals that he needs to, not that he wants to, that he cannot stop, that his identity depends on it. And people feel this, even if they cannot name it. That kind of relentless output does not read as strength. It reads as anxiety. And an anxious man, however talented, is not a man most people feel safe following. Compare this to the man who is comfortable doing nothing when nothing needs to be done. Who can sit in silence without needing to fill it? Who can walk away from a situation without needing the last word? That man reads as grounded, stable, certain of himself. And certainty, not effort, is what commands the deepest respect. If this is changing the way you see yourself right now, drop the word restraint in the comments. One word. Let me know where you are watching from. This brings us to the most important reframe in this entire video. Hold this clearly. Everything we have covered, the conditioning trap, the Stoic economy of action, the Machiavellian signal, the behavioral science, it all points to one principle. Strategic restraint is not the absence of power. It is the fullest expression of it. The man who does less and wins is not winning because he found a shortcut. He is winning because he has broken free from the need to perform. He no longer acts to be seen acting. He no longer speaks to fill silence. He no longer works to prove that he is working. He moves when movement is necessary. He speaks when his words carry weight. He gives his energy only to the things that deserve it. And everything else he lets pass. This is the Machiavellian Stoic code. Not laziness, not avoidance, not manipulation. It is the deliberate, calm, daily practice of choosing where you place yourself and refusing to place yourself anywhere that does not meet that standard. It means you stop answering every message the moment it arrives because your time is not a vending machine. It means you stop volunteering for things that cost you energy but give no real return because your effort is not free. It means you stop explaining yourself to people who are not owed an explanation because your decisions do not require an audience. It means you protect your time the way a king protects his army. You do not send all your soldiers into every skirmish. You save them for the battles that change the outcome of the war. You know when to advance. You know when to hold. And you know, with absolute clarity, when to do nothing at all. Because doing nothing, when everything around you is demanding that you react, is one of the hardest and most powerful things a man can do. It requires more discipline than working 18 hours a day. It requires a man who is fully secure in himself, who does not need external activity to feel like he is enough. That security, that stillness is what the Stoics were pointing at. It is what Machiavelli observed in the men who held real power. And it is what behavioral science confirms when it shows us that the men who are most respected are rarely the ones who try hardest to be. Each morning before you begin, ask yourself one question. What is the one thing that, if done well today, actually moves my life forward? Not 5 things. 1. Give that your full energy, your full presence. Everything else, handle it only if it must be handled. Let the rest disappear. Do not measure how busy you were at the end of the day. Measure how precisely you moved. Did you act only when action was required? Did you protect your attention or scatter it across 20 things that will not matter in a year? The man who does less, intentionally, strategically, with full awareness, always ends up with more. More respect, more focus, more of the things that actually matter. Not because he found a secret, but because he stopped wasting himself on the things that do not. Most men will spend their whole lives working hard for men who learn to work less. They will grind for people who understand restraint. They will exhaust themselves in service of a game they never took the time to understand. You have taken that time today. You were conditioned to perform effort. That conditioning was never yours to keep. The Stoics knew that a man who moves with precision holds more power than a man who moves without rest. Machiavelli knew that scarcity commands more respect than constant availability. And behavioral science confirms what both already understood. Certainty is more powerful than effort. 3 things. Protect your energy. Guard your presence. Move only when it means something. Most men will never do this. Not because they cannot. Because they are addicted to being seen trying. If this video changed the way you see yourself, drop one word in the comments. Restraint. That one word will tell me everything. And if you want to go deeper, watch the next video on this channel. The man who keeps learning is the man who keeps winning.